Welcome to the Josh Huisman Podcast.
Well, just about a year ago, I started this podcast, and my goal was to have conversations with people that are interesting, people who have accomplished things, whether it's in ministry, through creativity, through all these different deals. And especially my hope was that I would get to sit down with people who, through the years, I've respected and admired from a distance, and then maybe I get to meet them and have interesting conversations with them. And today is one of those fulfillments because I have Wayne Kirkpatrick on the podcast, a songwriter, a producer, someone who has done pretty much everything in the music industry. And he doesn't know it. He's going to get weirded out by some things I'm going to tell him that I know that he has done in music and things in his past. But anyway, I want to just start off by saying on this episode, Wayne Kirkpatrick, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, man. I could give a long, extensive, if I went just down your credits of the things that you have accomplished in the music industry, it's a long list. And so you would sit here and start to feel really awkward, but I just
probably
for those listening and those watching right now, this man here, we're going to go into some things that it's really cool. And I guess the best place for me to start is when I reached out to you and said, hey, would you consider coming on and talking about the music that you've been a part of? You were gracious enough to respond and say thank you when it would have been so easy to just say, I don't even know who you are, man, you know? So anyway, first off, do you get a lot of requests for people to come and to talk about the music you're a part of, and especially in the Christian music past?
A fair share. I wouldn't say, I don't know what's a lot, occasionally.
Occasionally.
I get asked, and when someone likes to do a deep dive like that, I'm happy to go down memory lane and see what all I can remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. Well, we're going to do that for sure. How about this? Okay. So you grew up in Mississippi?
No, I was born in Mississippi.
Born in Mississippi?
But only because that was the closest hospital to where my mother was. I grew up in Louisiana.
Okay.
So up through junior high, basically Alexandria, Louisiana, and then summer before high school, moved to Baton Rouge, and then Baton Rouge for all through high school and into about almost 3 years of college.
Okay. And so as you were growing up, let me ask you, did you come from a musical family?
Sort of. My dad was was in the choir at church, and then led the music in our church growing up. And so he sang when he was in college. He sang, and he worked in radio a little bit and things like that. So definitely a musical in that sense that there was music in our house. Early days of Andre Crouch and the stuff that I was the oldest of the kids in our house. So he had everything from those kinds of Andre Crouch and the Gaithers and then also the cast album of Hello Dolly and The Music Man and things like that. So and also whatever Johnny Mathis and all of the crooners and
Yeah. So when did you realize that you had a gift of music? Especially, I'm always interested in when talking to songwriters. When did it become hearing someone else's song to hearing your own melodies and your own lyrics and your own things in your head?
Probably when I started learning to play guitar. My mom signed me up for piano lessons when I was in elementary school. I don't even think she asked if I wanted to take, she just signed me up, and I really enjoyed that. But I was learning classical music, basically, spinning wheel and then whatever, Fur-Elise and all these kind of and it didn't really click with me that I was playing chords, it wasn't. I didn't learn a whole lot of theory in doing that for some reason. When I moved to the summer before I went into high school, which was kind of a traumatic time to move. All my friends were going into that I went to junior high with were going into high school, and I left. And so when I went into a new high school in Baton Rouge, I didn't know anybody. And so I started teaching myself to play guitar. And literally teaching myself. I had a book called Instant Fun with Guitar and I would, it had all these old songs like The Old Gray Mare and, things like that. And I sat in my room and taught myself to play guitar. And at some point, I can remember sitting at the piano with my guitar and playing a G chord on the guitar and going, oh, here's a G chord on the piano. Everything kind of started clicking. And then also, I think because it was I was going into high school, teenage years and everything, starting to explore all of these emotions and feelings. And I just started writing. It was kind of therapeutic. It was a way for me to kind of express what I was feeling and also discover what I was feeling. Writing is discovery in a lot of ways. So I think that's when I started kind of naturally gravitating towards singer-songwriter kind of approach. I think that's when I started feeling like I wouldn't say that I knew I had an ability as much as that I just knew I wanted to have the ability.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of got obsessed with it,
It's pretty awesome. And, as we get further into this conversation, I think it would be really cool for the people listening, for those who aren't familiar with the work that you have done. Let me just throw out a couple names, and then that'll give people kind of a basis. And so if we're talking about in the Christian music world who you've written for, we're talking about Amy Grant. We're talking about Michael W. Smith. We're talking about Casting Crowns.
Wow.
You've done something with them. And so those are some names. And then if you want to talk about in, we'll call it the secular music world or the mainstream music world, even names like Eric Clapton has cut one of your songs, Garth Brooks, you've worked with Garth Brooks, Little Big Town.
Right.
So I'm letting people know as we're about to go into some things here that, listen, I wasn't blowing smoke when I said you have worked with some of the biggest named artists in the world. And when you think back to that time, sitting at a piano, figuring out chords, could you have even imagined where you're sitting now and the things that you work on? Could you have even dreamed this?
No. No. I was pretty much a wallflower growing up, and very shy, very inward, not bold at all, and not a whole lot of self-confidence, So the thought that I would create something that someone else would want to have anything to do with was pretty far from the realm of possibility for me, At the same time, there was something in me that was driving me to just try to excel, I was a sponge, I was just trying to learn everything that I could about whether it was playing or writing, singing, any of that kind of stuff. I just became I became such a student of everything that I was interested in trying to emulate.
Yeah.
And and then the further along I got, then sure, I would find myself dreaming about, wow, what if I could do this or this or this? But a lot of times, honestly, I would, if the dream got too big, I would kind of stop myself and go, yeah, right, like that would happen, So it's kind of an interesting process.
And so you came, basically, what brought you to Nashville was school, right? Or was it music and then school came later, or how did that work? Okay.
Both. So when I went to LSU, I graduated from Baton Rouge High School.
Okay.
And went to LSU, and my major was landscape architecture.
Right. I could
And-
see the connection between music and...
Yeah, it's practically the same thing.
That's where they all get started.
Yeah. And I was really interested. I went to a magnet school in Baton Rouge. And so it was kind of like a college prep school where you had to declare a major and you had to maintain a certain grade point average. Mm-hmm. It was a public school, but you had to be accepted into it. You had to have a certain grade point average. And that doesn't mean you had to be a brainiac. I mean, you had to have like a C plus average or something to get in. And then you had to maintain a certain grade point average in your major, like a 3.0 or something. And so they had a class, architectural drawing. So I took drafting in high school, and I was really interested in that. But I think architecture had a little more math than I wanted, and I loved design. Mm-hmm. And so I looked into the landscape architecture department, and that was interesting to me. So I worked through college. I worked as a draftsman at an electrical engineering firm. Mm-hmm. And, 'cause I liked to draw, and I liked mechanical drawing and things like that. So, but I was also, at that point, I had been writing songs all through high school, and I was really, really interested in music, but I didn't know that you could really do anything in music as an occupation. Mm-hmm. Or if you could, my thinking back then was, well, I'm going to do landscape architecture as something to fall back on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If the music thing, and eventually, of course, you learn that you don't go into something like music. You gotta dive into the deep end. You don't do it on the side. If you really want to kind of get anywhere with it, it's not so. But when I was in school in landscape architecture, I got into my third year, and I started feeling like this is not what I want to do. I really want to pursue music. And one of the most pivotal points that I remember in school was there was a class that I was taking. It was a communications class, and the assignment was you had to do something in front of the camera. And you could do whatever you wanted. Mm-hmm. You just had to present in front of the camera. Most of the people that were in that class did something because they were connected to landscape architecture in some way. They would do like, here's how to pot a plant, how to plant seeds in a garden, or just something like that. When it came to me, I sat on a stool and sang a song I wrote. That was my presentation.
Okay.
And I finished the song, and then the professor, the first thing he said was, "What are you doing in landscape architecture?" I said, "I don't know." But that was one of those like, oh yeah, maybe I should kind of pursue this a little further. And I actually I went to a guidance counselor. I said, I really don't know what I want to do. He gave me really good advice because he had gone through the same thing. And he said, sit out a semester and just clear your head and figure out what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I looked at the music department at LSU, which was not the kind of thing I was looking for. And then a friend told me about Belmont College. And it was college, it's university now. It was Belmont College then. And they had a recording studio. And I was like, I didn't even know anything like that existed. Mm-hmm. I drove up here with a friend and toured the school. And I was like, this is home,
Yeah.
This is where I want to be. And the guy that I came up here with was going to be my roommate. He backed out. And,
and then you were up here by yourself.
I was up here by myself. I did not know one person up here.
When you were talking, I was thinking about, and I can't place it. It was either a movie or a biography about an artist who made it big, whose parents, and this is kind of, I guess, the story that for so many, whose parents were thinking that there's no money or there's no living to be made off music. And the artist was saying even then when they were playing to arenas and making, the parents were still going, so how long is this going to last?
Yeah, right.
This is it, Yeah. And so it is whenever, to me, someone says, I'm going to go into the music industry, there was definitely a shadow over it where someone go, can you even really do that? You know?
I will say I had the opposite experience with my parents. I can remember we were repainting the kitchen in our house. That's why I was still at home, and we had a record playing, music playing in the background, some, contemporary artist, something, and we're painting. And my mom goes, "You're just as good as he is." And I was like, "No, I'm not."
Yeah.
She's like, "Yes, you are." I had my, I'm going, "Why aren't you doing anything with this?"
Yeah.
It took me a while to get to the bold step of moving away.
Yeah.
And coming, yeah.
But that probably meant so much, though, that you have that support. And, those little things that sometimes people say, of course, when it's coming from people who you love and who love you. Mm-hmm. But I'm just a big believer in encouraging people, even if they're at the beginning of their journey in something, of just, if you see something that might light a fire in them and you can be a support to them and saying something positive like that. It just makes all the, because there's definitely enough negative in the world.
Yes, and I experienced it when I was coming up in this business, to the point that it was like, it was valuable to know, how important it is to speak to how vulnerable people are, and how important it is to say things that aren't damaging. You can be truthful without being damaging, and you can be supportive and encouraging, in that way. And I learned a lot from just kind of getting kicked around a little bit myself.
Yeah. So let's get a little bit into this the career things that you have done, because obviously you're at Belmont. And how do you get connected then? Because where you begin primarily in writing, is that not with writing, but what I'm saying from a professional level, was that with Amy Grant, or where did it begin in that world?
Yeah. Yes. When I first came to Nashville and was at Belmont, I didn't come here and go, "I'm taking this town by storm." I was just like, when I came here, I didn't even know what a publishing company was. I thought it was a place where they printed sheet music. I really didn't know anything. So I was taking these classes and learning about the music business, and I was really, again, just being a sponge and just soaking everything up and trying to learn as much as I could. And the music business is so much about networking, connection, who you know. And, there were a couple of guys that were classmates that were aspiring publishers, and they liked my writing, and we kind of did a little publishing thing. They both worked at publishing companies as, low-level positions, but they had access to recording equipment, in studios, and would go in after hours, and I could record. I didn't really have anything much to record my music on. So going into offices that are studios.
It was a different time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I also had my brother moved up here, and we lived together for a while. And early on, he kind of fancied himself my manager,
okay,
of sorts. And there was a project at Belmont, a class that we both took. I took first, and he took. And the final assignment was you had to interview someone in the music business. And on my project, I had interviewed Shane Keister, who was a keyboard player, big session keyboard player back then, the 80s and 90s. And when my brother had that assignment, he went and ultimately interviewed Amy Grant. And through doing that, got to know the management company where he had gone to try to set up the interviews, and he left them my tape of music, kind of acting as my manager.
Yeah, right.
And Mike Blanton, who was Amy's manager, heard the tape and called, wanted to meet with me. So between the classmates that I had that were working in the publishing, like the Nashville publishing companies, and then the Blanton Herald, the management, Amy, which was in the Christian music side, I kind of started making these connections that eventually led to the first song I ever had recorded was with a new artist that was going to be on Reunion Records. His name was Billy Sprague, and I wrote a song. I brought a song that I had started to Billy. I got set up to write with him, and I pulled out this song that I had started, and he liked it, and so we finished it together, and he put it on his first record. It was a song called "What a Way to Go," and that was the first cut I ever had. And then the second and third cuts that I ever got were on an Amy Grant, the Unguarded record.
Okay.
And one of them was a song called "Wise Up" that I wrote with a friend of mine, Billy Simon, co-writer, and the other one was called "Love of Another Kind" that I wrote with Rich Mullins.
Wow.
Which was the first, our first writing session together.
So did you get connected to Rich Mullins on that writing session, or did you?
Yeah, I got set up to write with him. You know, it was before he was an artist. He had written "Sing Your Praise to the Lord" was a big Amy song, you know. So, and he was writing for a publishing company called Meadow Green, which was the Christian division of a big publishing company in town called Tree Music. And Meadow Green worked closely with Blanton Harrell and their publishing group, you know. So the way that stuff works, it's like, oh, you should get with so-and-so and y'all should try to write together and do all that, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a writing session we got together to write, you know.
You hear some interesting Rich Mullins stories through the years. Did you have any, when you had your writing session with him, did you see, oh yeah, he runs to the beat of his own drum or plays to the beat of his own drum?
Oh, definitely. Yes. And so when I got with him, went over to Tree Publishing, sitting in this room, he was at the piano, and I will say the backstory is I didn't have a job. You know, I was not making any money, and I had rent that I had. You know, so I was like kind of scrounging for figuring out how to make ends meet.
How to live.
Yeah, and Rich, we wrote that song, and then Rich had to go. He was driving to Michigan to do music for some camp. You know, some summer camp or something that he was doing. And he said, come with me. I just met him this day, you know. He said, come with me. Yeah, I don't want to go by myself. Come with me, you know. And I was like, I can't. I said, I have to make money. And I had gotten this, you know, those like temporary job services, like it's called Manpower. And it's like where you kind of sign in. It's like, I have a job for a day, you know, to go work at something, you know, and I have to make money to pay my
agency,
rent.
Right?
Yeah, basically.
Right.
And he said, "How much do you need for your rent?" I said, "I've got to make $150." And he said, "I'll pay you that." And then I was like, I don't know if I can do that. And my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, but my girlfriend, you know, was going to be picking me up at the end of that session. So I said, I can't go do that. And so I left, and she came and picked me up. I got in the car, and she's like, how was the writing session? I said, well, it was good. I said, but, you know, he asked me to go to Michigan for this week, you know, to do this camp. And she said, you should go. And because part of it was like, I didn't want to leave her by herself, you know, it's like, really? She said, yeah, you should go. And so I was like, well, okay, let me see if he's still in the bin. I got out of the car, went and knocked on the back door of Tree Publishing and waited for a minute. And then Rich opened the door, and I was like, hey, I'll go with you. He's like, great, I'll pick you up tomorrow.
No way.
Yeah. And
that's awesome.
But in my mind, I was like, so we drive out. He comes and picks me up the next day. And he's like, I got to get gas. So we go to a gas station. He starts filling up, and he's like, hey, can I borrow some money to pay for gas? And I was like, oh, no. I have just been hosed here. I have been conned.
Oh, it's great.
Because I'm going to have even less money when I get back, you know. And so, but I went and did the camp with him, and we had a great road trip together, and really got to know each other on that, and then we got back and he paid me,
Yeah.
and I made my rent,
That's great.
yeah.
Oh man. So, all right. So the first time, all right, here we go. The first memory I have of you would be on a VHS concert tape.
Oh no.
With Michael W. Smith, with his coat of many colors, Jacob, not Jacob Joseph. That's what I always called it. But and I don't want to weird you out, but I can even remember hearing you sing. I think you sang the chorus to a song called "Restless Heart."
I sang Amy's part.
Did you?
She sang that on the record.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was one of my favorite songs from that live concert. And that's why I said it would weird you out a little bit, but I could still hear you singing that song.
No, what weirds me out is when I see that video and I have a perm.
You look great.
That was the age
what
of the
I would
perm.
do. What I would do for a perm these days.
Yes, I know. Me too. But yeah, I sang. That was a song. I think he wrote that. He might have written that with Amy. But she sang it on the, and it's high. Mm-hmm. And so I took over that.
Oh well, you sang it great. I mean, if you say it's high, it didn't sound like it was for you at all. How did you get on that tour?
So when I was kind of brought into the Blanton Harrell family, Mike Blanton came to me one day. They were putting together a band for Michael. It was going to be his first tour. So they were putting a band together. And Mike Blanton came to me and he said, "Hey, can you play electric guitar? Because we want to put together a band together for Michael, and I'd like for you to go out. Can you play electric guitar?" And I was like, "You mean like leads and stuff like that?" He said,
"You mean like good? Good?"
He said, "No, just rhythm guitar or something."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh yeah, I can do that." Now I didn't own an electric guitar.
Okay,
I did not play electric guitar.
That's a problem.
But I said that I could because I really wanted to do that tour. I played acoustic guitar. That was, So now I had this audition that I had to go to. I had to learn 2 songs and go to this audition. So I went to a friend of mine who was an electric guitar player to borrow an amp. And I said, "Show me how to get a clean sound and show me how to get a distorted sound on the amp." And then I needed an electric guitar, and actually, Rich Mullins gave me an electric guitar that he had for me to use for the audition.
Wow!
And
that paid off that trip.
That's right. And I still have that guitar because he never took it back.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But so I went and I learned those 2 songs that I needed to learn, and went to the audition. And I guess I did okay enough
You made it
to get into the band. Yeah.
Wow. So that was your first experience, like touring and being a part of all that,
Yes.
And for those of us who haven't really toured like that, I think sometimes people hold touring in a glamorous light. How did you feel once you got on the road and you were a part of something like that? Well,
I didn't know glamour from not glamour at that point. To me, it was all. I just loved it. Mm-hmm. I was playing music for a living. You know? And I was with a great group of people.
Well, that was a great band.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go into some names on that band.
Well, yeah, Chris Harris, Mark Heimerman, David Huff, the drummers, and Chris Rodriguez,
right?
Yeah,
Mark Heimerman.
Yeah, Mark Heimerman.
Mm-hmm. Wow,
and
good stuff.
All people that I did not know.
And Michael W. Smith was in that band too.
Yeah, he showed up occasionally, and I didn't know, I didn't know any of these people, but then they became, good friends. So it was great. Was it glamorous? I mean, we were on a tour bus, and we were staying in hotels, and we were getting paid to play, and getting, so it was glamorous to me.
Yeah.
I mean, as the years went on, I did some glamorous tours, that would then make that one look not so glamorous. But to me, I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good memories.
Great
It sounds
memories,
like.
yeah.
Very cool. And so I know we were talking a little bit before we went live here about the 2 tours that you did with Michael W. Smith, and I'm really interested because the next tour was The Big Picture. Well, it wasn't called The Big Picture, but that was the album that you were touring.
It was called The Big Picture Tour.
Was it really?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. And that was when, on that album, you started doing some co-writing.
Yes.
And making it on there. And I heard you talk about this on another podcast with Andy Chrisman, which, by the way, he's coming on this podcast
great.
in May. So I'm looking forward to that. But you told the story behind Rocketown and co-writing Rocketown.
Yes.
And how that came about. And so if you could just kind of go into that a little bit, maybe how was Michael W. Smith's songwriting process and how did that come to you?
Yeah, well, when we were in rehearsals for the first tour, the Friends tour, which was that first one, in the rehearsals space, Michael, there was a song that he had that he wanted to put into his show, and it was just a piece of music that he had written, and he would play it, and he was just singing dummy lyrics to it, but he had plans to put it in the show. And so I'm standing behind him, playing, and all those rehearsals, I would, in my mind, now, this is, like I said, I'm not very bold, a bit of a wallflower, and, but he would play that, and I was like, I can write a lyric to that. I know and I was kind of doing it in my head, and he played it enough that I knew the melody, and I'd go home and I wrote a lyric to it, and I came in to a rehearsal one day and I just boldly, which against type, said, "Hey, I wrote this lyric. If you want to try it to the song, and he set it up there and started messing with it and singing it, and he said, "I like this," and it went into the show. So that was the first song we wrote. And when we got on the road, he was working on what would be his next album. He was always writing, so trying to come up with material. And he brought a piece of music. He said, "I've got this idea. Do you want to work on it with me?" And it was just a kind of a verse piece that he was singing. And at the end of it, he was singing the words Rocketown.
Rocketown.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, what is that? What is Rocketown? What do you mean? And he said, I'm thinking of it as a place where kids go to hang out, something like that. So, okay. That was kind of it as far as the extent of what the lyrical content would be. So in my mind, I pictured 2 places, Bourbon Street in New Orleans, because I grew up in Louisiana, and then Miracle Strip in Panama City, because I had relatives that lived in Panama, and these were like kid hangout places, not Bourbon Street necessarily, but kind of wild hangout places, and from that, I just kind of started formulating a story, and the song needed a chorus, which I sat down and wrote on a little Casio keyboard on the bus. Just play. And so I came up with that and came up with this lyric that I played for him. And then he really liked that. And then he started doing that. Eventually, he started doing that in the show.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Hey, I got this other idea. You want to write, And so I'd take that and start working on a lyric for that. And so it just kind of gradually, organically happened. And at one point, because up until that point, Debbie, his wife, had written the first 2 records with him, the lyrics for that. So, I said, well, I'm not going to write this whole, like, everything with you.
Right, they've got their thing going, and they
And he said, I don't know, maybe. I mean, at that point, she was now a mother and raising kids and all that, So he just kept giving me songs, and I'd write a lyric to it, and he would like it, so he'd give me another one. And
I would be
by the time tour was over, we had a lot of material for a next record.
It's really cool. I would be curious, with him having this vision and just this word Rocketown. You know, if you live in Nashville now, you know that there's a Rocketown that's been downtown for quite some time now. And, you know, you're saying you pictured the inspirations behind the lyrics when you're writing them. And, you know, I'm always fascinated by those who are given a vision for something, creating something. I mean, if we go back to your landscaping and go back to all that, like the thread that I see in all of it is that you've always been someone who you want to create.
Yes.
Something that wasn't there before. You started with a blank slate and you wanted to create something, you know, and have a vision for something. And you do that in your songs. I think you do that in your production when you're doing things and piecing things together that weren't there before.
I like the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about Rocketown, I think why I wanted to talk about that is because it was a song. It started as a word that is now a building.
I know. That's kind of wild to me because the building that place, which is a hangout for kids, but in a very positive way, you know.
Yeah.
But named after that song is that's.
I mean, go back to music. You can't do anything with music. I mean, it's just crazy how that works, and he had a vision for it, and you put melody to it. It's funny. I was just thinking when you were telling the story, if this were like in the '90s and we were doing like a video show, I would now turn to the camera and say, "And now here's the song Rocketown," you know, and we would play the song.
Yeah. Now you have to go. Now, if you go to Spotify, you can find that song.
You can stream it, everybody, but stay here. Stay here for now. So Rocketown off the Big Picture album. And so if we fast forward just a little bit, and I don't, you know, we don't need to hang out on the Michael W. Smith stuff that long, but
that's fine.
One of my favorites is Secret Ambition off the Eye to Eye album. And I would be curious, was that a piece of music that was brought to you, or were you involved in that process from the beginning?
Most of the time, if not all of the time, it was a piece of music that came to me. Michael is a music writer, and he would write these music and melodies and put them down and then give them to me. And we never sat in the same room and wrote together, you know. But so nothing was ever started as like, hey, here's a lyric, put a piece of music to it. It was always the other way around. So when he gave me the piece of music, the Secret Ambition, he was actually singing the word Secret Ambition. So a lot of times when he would give me a work tape, he's singing dummy lyrics, and a lot of times he's saying the same thing. He said, "I will be here for you" all the time. He said that eventually became a song.
Yeah.
So, you know, but so sometimes it would just be all nonsense. But sometimes if he was singing something and it sang well, I'd start with trying to make that be
a centerpiece,
part of the song.
Right.
Yeah. And he was singing Secret Ambition. And I don't know that he necessarily had that attached to anything, you know. But and that song I got with Amy, and we wrote that lyric together. And we started, you know, kind of determining that this could be a way to talk about the life of, you know, the journey of Jesus, the purpose of Jesus, and all, you know, in the song, and so that's kind of where it went. But it was all built off of that piece of music that he had established. And
it became just you know, for someone like me growing up in church, and especially when that video came out that had the I don't even know what company was doing it, where there was a theater production that was doing a Jesus story, and they kind of, maybe it was just done for the video. I don't know, but it was. I don't remember. Just that whole thing and the whole song and the story, the way that it was done, just a great song. That I think, you know, I don't want to go too far down this road. I so much miss the lyrical depth and storytelling of what Christian music used to be.
Oh yeah.
And there are so many times in my role in ministry, what I do in teaching, where I can go find songs from that time period and build devotions and lessons and things from from them that, now, I love the music and love the worship and those things, but it's very much it's all in the same world.
Right. It's narrowed in its scope.
It's narrowed in its scope. Most of the lyrics are similar. And I'm not making fun when I say this, but most songs have to do with breaking a chain of some sort, or having water pour on you some way, or and we're kind of in that world, But anyway, so that's where I love, and I have whole playlists that are just dedicated to just that time period of Christian music.
That time period was great, and I gotta say I don't know much of what's going on in Christian music these days, but back then, in the late, the time when I was working pretty heavily in it, I feel fortunate enough that the people that I was working with were kind of open to a wide, broad scope of exploration in lyrics, and kind of trying to, kind of be on the fringe sometimes, or outside the box, or just, talk about anything and everything. And, it was an age of that being embraced, maybe more so. I mean, obviously with Wichita more so than now. And I don't know if that's just the ebb and flow of the nature of the music business at large, and then how you have to, survive in it. And it's a business as much as it is all the other things. So, but yeah, I know what you mean. It was fun. It was a great playground for that.
Well, like if you think about, again, so we talk about Sacred Ambition, but another one we were talking about before we went live here that you co-wrote with Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant, is Place in This World. And let's just for a moment think about that song lyrically, right? I mean, here someone is looking for their purpose. I'm trying to find my place in this world, okay? Right. At the end of the song, the chorus doesn't say, I finally found a reason, no longer have to roam through the night. I mean, it doesn't give the solution. It gives the reality of life. Is sometimes we're in the middle of something, and maybe the answer doesn't have to be given in the 3-minute song. And
that's probably a running theme in a lot of the things that I write. Rocketown didn't resolve either. The story is open-ended. And I like, whenever it makes sense, to leave it open-ended so that you can come to your own conclusion about something, And I don't think that everything has to be neatly wrapped up in a bow. Life is messy. It's not neatly wrapped up, So something like that is an example of that. Just like, here's something for you to think about. And but then the underlying the message of that, that's a pretty general theme. I mean, who isn't looking for a reason, and roaming through the night to find their place in this world, It was, and the directive from Michael a lot of times, which was when he would start a new record, it's like, what do you want to talk about? And he was kind of ad nauseum would always go, I just want to speak to kids. And it's like, which is great. Yeah. It's like, okay. So I'm like, okay, what else can I do but think about, okay, what did I go through as a kid and in high school, So those kind of themes that are connected to all of us, like wanting to feel like you belong, or feeling insecure, questioning life, all of these things, relationships and all that, it's all there. So just kind of draw from all of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I got a fly flying on me here. That's crazy. Hey, so my wife is about to laugh really hard at this because now I got you here. I've asked Michael W. Smith to come on here, but I haven't been able to get him yet. Okay, my wife's gonna laugh because do you know that Place in This World became a hit song because I sang it in my talent show in 1991 in Chicago, Illinois.
So you were the one.
I was the one.
Okay.
No. So here's the funny story behind it. Okay. I grew up in a town called Thornton, Illinois, which is about 30 minutes south of Chicago. Okay. Not a Christian music hub by any stretch. But, I grew up and my family, my mom and dad are worship leaders in the church. We listened to Christian music. And of course I had the Michael W. Smith cassettes. I had the Petras and the Whitehearts. Whiteheart was my favorite rock band. But anyway, when new music would come out in Christian music, you could go to the bookstore and get those accompaniment tracks. Yeah. And you could sing along and whatever. So our school every year would do a talent show. And one year, Place in This World, it had just come out. I mean, I hadn't even heard the song, and I was listening to the accompaniment track. And it's like, I want to try and sing this in our school's talent show. And so I did, and fast forward not much later, I was graduating 8th grade, just to give you a little time frame here, okay? Now, at every 8th grade graduation, our school would pick the class song, and the class would sing that song. The year before, the class song was Motley Crue, Without You. Okay?
Okay.
To give you a little... So what our music teacher would do is he would write all the songs that were options on the board, and I can't remember. There was probably another Motley Crue or a Guns N' Roses or a whatever.
All the hair bands.
All the hair bands that wouldn't... Okay. I went and put Michael W. Smith, Place in This World. Okay? My class sang Place in This World for our class song. And so that evening, I don't know how it came about, but somehow it was already probably being played. So you got to remember, I'm an 8th grader who has no idea, right? And one of our friends goes, "They're playing it on the radio." Now, what's crazy is, and you laugh, because remember, Christian music didn't get played on pop radio.
Oh,
No. So hearing that song from Michael W. Smith on pop radio, of course, I had no idea how promotion works in public. Obviously, there was a
machine.
There was a machine that made it happen, right? But for us, we were like, we made it onto the radio. So anyway,
that's funny.
So when thinking about Place in This World and that song, for me, it even adds a special connection.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that was when you did the theme for the school. Was it a single at that time, or
it may have been?
Okay.
All I know is that it had become a big song.
Yeah.
But I will say we sang it for that graduation, and none of us had yet heard it on the radio.
Oh, okay.
So it was probably at the beginning of its life,
Yeah.
and taking off where it would go. For sure. And so that's why I joke around and say, I was fun. Yeah. It was really just more a timing thing. It's like, oh man, that's so cool, know? Mm-hmm. And it's funny, you mentioned then I put 2 songs together for him when it comes to his rise. And the second one that you already mentioned, I Will Be Here For You.
Right.
Because I remember you singing on that.
I sang on it, but I didn't write on it.
Really?
No. That was, he got together with Diane Warren, who's a big pop writer.
Okay.
And I laugh about it because I can imagine when he got with her and he played her this piece of music, he was probably singing "I Will Be Here For You" because he sang it on everything. It was like, because there was another song that we had written earlier, which is when you're up against the wall, I will be here for you. It had that "I will be here for you" phrase in it. Mm-hmm. So, but when he got with her, they wrote one where that was
one of my favorites off that album, by the way, too. For You.
Oh yeah,
I love that song.
So we had "For You," and then he had "I Will Be Here For You," and it's like, oh, somebody finally picked up on that title. It was funny. Yeah. So, but yeah, I sang the solo line, the alternate counterpart.
Yeah,
lines on that.
Sounds great. Did a really
you.
good job. So, all right, let's fast forward because we're running out of time, and you got so many things here we can't. Down the road, so later on, I did not know until Gordon Kennedy when he was in here, and we were just talking, and he's such a nice guy, and he's told me off camera about, you, him, Tommy Sims, and the songwriting stuff that you guys have done together. You guys were a part of that Garth Brooks, Chris Gaines album, and writing for that. But then also, the song that really that you won a Grammy on and just great fame on was "Change the World" with Eric Clapton. And Gordon shared on this that song wasn't even cut by Eric Clapton first. That Winona Judd.
Winona did it first. Yeah.
What are your memories of like when that song was first brought to you, or the beginnings of that song?
You mean to write on?
Yeah, to write on.
Well, it was me and Gordon primarily had been toying with doing a band, and getting a record deal as a band. So we had been doing a lot of demos with that, and Tommy Sims was involved in that, in the recording of that too. And so we had a batch of songs that we had recorded, and there was actually a record label that had expressed some interest in what we were doing, but he didn't feel like there was. They heard a single, and if they're going to sign you, they got to have something that they're going to be able to take to radio, So there was another batch of songs that we were going to do. And there was this song idea that Tommy, because we all worked on sessions together, and if I was producing stuff, Tommy and Gordon were playing on sessions that I was producing, and so we would kind of throw out song ideas that we were messing around with. And Tommy had played this idea a few times, and he'd sing "Change the World," and all that. It kind of floated around for a while, and at one point we were at a session, and also thinking, I was just like, hey, put that song idea down. I put out a cassette recorder and recorded. I still have that tape. Sing it, and he sang down what he had. And I was like, I'll take it and mess with it. And so to me, from a lyric standpoint, the tendency would be to make that a song about like a social consciousness kind of, hey, we can all get
change
together
the world.
Change the world.
Right.
When I was listening to it, I was like, I don't think that's not what it says to me. I think it's a love song, And I and again, drawing from my own experiences of it, just kind of went down the path of, if I could change the world, you would be in love with me. Basically, was the theme of that song. And I wrote a verse, came up with a chorus lyrically, most of it, and came up with what I felt like was a second verse, and didn't have. There was one line I didn't have yet, And I was like, so it just kind of, I just mull it over, and there was no deadline on anything. It was just a song to be written. When we were going to do this second batch of songs, Gordon called me and said, hey, Tommy's up in Ohio, and I'm going up there to work on something with him. While I'm there, I'm going to do a demo of this Change the World song for this next batch of band stuff to pitch this label. And I said, well, he said, can you give me what you wrote on the song? I said, it's not finished. He said, well, give it to me, and I'll finish it on my drive up to, So he took it, and he filled in the missing place, wrote a first verse, filled in, changed a line here or there, and then sent it to me. And then he did a demo with Tommy up there in Ohio. And, that was that. And then so we had this demo. And then Tony Brown, who's a big Nashville producer, was producing Winona. And he heard the demo and wanted to record it on Winona, which it's
still out there. I mean, you can go and stream that too.
It just took a long time for her to do that album. She had a baby, and and in the meantime, Tony, there was a girl named, Gordon probably told this story. There's a woman named Kathy Nelson who was in Tony Brown's office. She was a music supervisor for Touchstone Pictures, but Tony said, "Let me show you this song I'm going to cut on Winona," and he played her that demo. She remembered that song when she was looking for songs for a movie that she was music supervising, which was, I guess, maybe a year later, called Phenomenon, that John Travolta was in.
Remember
and
that.
she was looking for a vehicle for Eric Clapton and Babyface to do together, and she remembered that song, and that's how it got in the hands of Eric Clapton, was through that.
So the work that Babyface and Eric Clapton did on it was, how close is the demo to what the finished product came from what they recorded?
I would say the Winona version is closer to the demo. What Babyface and Eric Clapton did, of course, you got Eric Clapton's phenomenal guitar playing doing that, which changes the color of everything, and then all the background vocal stuff that Babyface did, that was all him. That wasn't on. There were background vocals on the demo, but not like what he did. So. The essence of it was still there, but they definitely put their stamp on it.
Yeah. And I was curious when I asked that question back in 2019. Gordon and some of the guys from Whiteheart did a reunion concert here for their Freedom album.
Yeah.
And Tommy Sims was here. And before they did the Whiteheart songs, each of them did stuff from their writing and things from the past. And Tommy Sims sang "Change the World." You got to hear that dude sing that song.
Oh,
I know you heard it. I'm saying to people who are out there,
Yeah.
when he started singing, oh my goodness, his voice,
Yeah, he has a great voice.
so awesome. So that's why I ask. I'm like, you got Tommy Sims singing it on a demo somewhere?
Actually, I think on the demo, I think Gordon sang it.
Gordon singing
on the
it?
demo.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we've each sang it at some point along the way, obviously now. But yeah, Tommy has that great soulful voice that he had,
It was awesome for sure to hear him sing that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, so as we kind of wrap this up, one of the things that you're involved in now, we could go into your work as a producer and the great stuff that you have done there. You've won awards for your producing and all of that. And I though couldn't let you leave here because you have been writing for productions on Broadway. You've done.
Right.
You've been nominated for Tony Awards, and I was even talking with you before. Now you're even working on a musical about Bluebird Cafe.
Yes.
That was announced a few years ago that you're working on, and I love that. I just think from storytelling and writing songs that tell a story. In fact, the theme that we've kind of been talking about in some of these songs is you kind of visualizing a picture of a story and all of that.
It's all the same. It's storytelling, in one way or another. And for me, the bookend of that. So I started working on Broadway about, almost 10 years ago now. Our first show that we had produced on Broadway was a show called Something Rotten. And it came out in 2015. So, and then I wrote them with my brother and John O'Farrell, another co-writer. And then the second show that we did, which is running now in London, which is an adaptation of Mrs. Doubtfire. So it's Mrs. Doubtfire, the musical. The Bluebird musical is something that I'm developing as a new project that I'm excited about. We've got about 8 or 9 songs written so far for it. But the bookend of that is, I talked about going to Baton Rouge High, the magnet school, and you had to declare a major. My major was theater.
Okay.
So when I got, and I was in theater all through high school, as a performer, actually, believe it or not. I would never do that now. But, and so when I got back to working in theater and working around all these theater people, it was like, in a way, I was like, I'm kind of back home. These are my people in a way. These are the friends that I grew up with in high school that I hung around with. Theater nerds.
Yeah.
And so it's really been gratifying to be able to kind of relive high school in a way, but on a professional level.
Yeah. So how many songs are you trying to have for the Bluebird thing? Like, what is a good musical need?
Typically, in a musical, you usually have, if it's not a sung-through musical, if it's like a book musical, 16 to 18 songs.
Okay.
So we got a ways to go.
It is a big undertaking.
Yeah, it's a lot. And you usually write more than you use.
Okay.
For Something Rotten, we wrote over 50 songs.
Oh my goodness, that's
We
unreal.
learned a lot. We learned a lot on the first one. We learned that we need to define our target when we're writing. But yeah, it's quite a.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
You're like making me sweat. Sitting here thinking
Yes.
about it. I'm just going. Yeah, I was telling you about the fun project I was doing on the side with a friend, and it's not. We think we have like 12 or 13, and half of them are written. So we're not going to get to 50. Don't you worry about that.
That would be wise to not get to 50.
I know, because I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have that in me. So,
Yes.
Man. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on here.
You're welcome.
We were even laughing about Tennessee Crossroads, who did a documentary on you about woodworking and you building clocks out of game boards. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, I got into this. I call it a hobby gone wild, but I started making clocks out of vintage board games many years ago, just as a hobby, and then it kind of led to actually did some artisan festivals where I would set up a tent and sell them and do And this Tennessee Crossroads, this is several years ago. They came and they feature people in Tennessee that do various,
Well, that would be you.
Yeah. And so they, a songwriter who makes clocks, I don't know, it was a story, I guess they thought, and you can still find that. It's still, I think it's on YouTube.
That's where I saw it when we
Yeah.
first kind of got connected, and I was just looking for some things to learn more about you. And I was thinking, what are the commercials? The most interesting man in the world. I'm like, Wayne Kirkpatrick's like the most interesting. He does everything when it comes to this stuff. So, man, well, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate you coming on here.
Welcome. Thanks
Appreciate
for having me.
your music and it definitely inspired me. Oh,
Great.
one last lyric for you. You ready for this? Hold on.
don't know, am I?
You can't leave, okay? Everyone's going to have to be patient as I look this up because I have not planned on asking you this, but I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know, and it's my mind, okay? There's a song, I believe you were involved in the co-writing. Was it Love Me Good?
Yes.
On Michael W. Smith's album, Live the
Yes.
Life? Okay. All right, so I'm going to read you a lyric, and I want to ask you where in the world this came
anticipate
from.
what you're about to read.
Yeah, I'm sure
Okay.
you've been asked before. Sometimes I feel like I'm afraid of my own shadow, and then sometimes I can feel as bold as Genghis Khan. But I could never live in a yurt on a diet of Mongolian barbecue. I conquer the world for a moment, then the moment is gone. Is this a personal struggle?
Is there a problem with that?
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard that. You want to talk about, I don't think I would hear that on a CCM worship album.
And you know what's funny? Whenever I hear that, I mean, that was one of those moments where it's like I was given a playground and allowed to play. And I had gone to an exhibit in Nashville, I think, and it was some sort of Mongolian, some sort of exhibit, and they had a Mongolian tent in there, and it was called a yurt.
Wow.
And I was like, well, that's a new. I didn't know that. I learned that. I was like, I'm gonna put that in a song
That
somewhere.
is so cool.
And I found a way to sneak it in
did.
tie in Mongolian barbecue and make it just about feeling bold and then like cowering again.
Well, I mean, when you presented that, obviously somebody had to sing it.
It's
So-
Michael.
And I can hear him singing it. And just, I could never live in a yurt on a diet of Mongolian barbecue. My goodness.
Well, that's the Mongolian tie there, is because I went to that exhibit, and that's what Mongolians call their tent, was a yurt.
A yurt. Wow. That's great. So let me ask you this, because that was off the Live the Life album. Were you involved in Missing Person on that album? Okay. On a serious note, such a great song, and
you.
such a great lyric behind that whole song. And if I could just go deep for a moment, right? One of the things that was a surprise to me as a pastor in ministry that I have said, and if I were just to be transparent for a moment, and Missing Person takes on a different maybe angle than what might be intended in the song, but you know how songs can become your own.
Yeah.
Okay. There have been times in ministry, I've been in full-time ministry for over 20 years, and in pastoral ministry, and it's a service. Your servant heart is supposed to be on display, right? And that's who you want to be. And for me, in my pursuit, in my relationship with Christ, what I want to be is more like Him every day. And that's what I strive to be. But there have been times when I forget who I am, and it's scary because sometimes you can find yourself getting into the trap of trying to be something for everybody else. And
Definitely, yeah.
and if you go too far down that road, where sometimes people will come along and tell you who you're supposed to be or how you're supposed to act or all of those different things. One day you wake up and you don't remember who you are anymore. And so I will listen to Missing Person and I don't share all those things to go. It's actually a good reminder for me, it's a course correction. Okay, get back to who God created you to be, and not all the other things that others think you should be.
You think they expect you to be.
Yeah. So that line, though, I've been searching for that missing person, and listen to that song. I know my wife loves that song too. It just has a special meaning. So
nice.
Anyway, thank you. I know these are the things that you never probably think of.
I haven't. Yeah. I mean, I haven't thought of that song in a while. When you were saying it, it's like, okay, Missing Person. Yeah, I remember that now. But yeah, and
so if I could, let me take you down your own memory lane, okay? Because
yes,
and you might be like, oh, okay, get me out of here. Just to give people an example, just lyrically of what you wrote here, and I just want to make sure I get it right. That's what. Otherwise, I could just do it off the top of my head. But the verse of the song, another question in me. It's one for the powers that be. It's got me thrown, and so I put on my poker face. And so now you see where I'm coming from. Put on my poker face, and I try to figure it out. This undeniable doubt, a common occurrence, feeling so out of place. And I mean, we go down the whole lyric, but just for me, I just go, oh, this is definitely reading my journal here.
Yeah. Well, and there again, the themes that I tend to gravitate towards are those places of questioning and doubt and dealing with insecurities and wrestling with external forces and all of that kind of stuff, which, just trying to be real about what we go through,
It's great stuff, and it definitely, I think God gives us that stuff to show that, hey, you're not alone. Other people go through this. I think the only lyric missing in that song, you should have put in, I will be here for you.
Well,
somehow.
It was probably in the demo.
It was. Anyway, wait, hey, can I shake your hand?
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you.
Wayne Kirkpatrick, and you can go and hear his music and the things he's been a part of all across the board. And so, but anyway, thank you so much for everything you've done, for being here on the podcast. And if you like the podcast, share it with your friends and family. We will be back here with another episode next week, but blessings on you. Thank you for being on here. All right, everybody, have a great week.